This is part of a new series that just started. And so we thought we would start it with some legendary figures in Auroville. And I think most people know Johnny. Johnny introduced the capsule to Auroville in the early years. He is an Australian architect, among other things. And Marc is a product designer and many other things. And he has brought upcycling to a new level in Auroville. And I think you all know there's a stand 4 number upcycling in the visitor center. And also he works at the Recenter. So these two have done an extraordinary adventure, which they're going to tell us about. The thing is that Auroville itself, of course, is an epic adventure that the mother started for us. And there is a spirit in Auroville that we want to, in some way, re-inspire a bit, because you may have noticed there are some things going on in Auroville that are not always exactly what we would call in the spirit of Auroville. So we're just doing this as a family. This is for all of us. It's community. And I think it's very appropriate that we have two people like this who have basically dedicated their life to the community and done extraordinary things. So thank you all for coming and welcome. And now we'll turn it over to our distinguished guests.
So this adventure actually begins, it's a long story, that begins about 15 years ago, when this young man, who was then in his early 20s, as he is, I think, he's at least in his mid-20s or going on 30s there. Corentin, his name is. He goes by the nickname of Coco. He turned up in Fertile as a young engineering student, and part of his degree course was to spend a year or some part of a year working outside of France on an engineering project. And so he originally came to work with Robbie in Orica. And then because his cousin was staying with us in Fertile, he came by Fertile at a time when I was building a windmill, among other things, and he became fascinated by what we were doing in Fertile, and then went back to France. He stayed with us, I think, for about 3 months. He then went to Bangladesh, where when he finished his degree, he went to Bangladesh and he was working with the boat builders in Bangladesh using jute and polyester. Apparently, there was an attempt there to rather than using glass fiber with polyester to build boats, they were using jute. And so, as a project, they were building boats from jute and polyester. He then built himself a small boat, based on the local fishing boats in Bangladesh, and he sailed that then personally around the Indian Ocean, right around the Indian Ocean, down to Sumatra and up the eastern coast and Thailand, and realized that he had the wherewithal to build himself a boat and sail back to France. And so he built himself then a larger boat. The first boat he built barely had a cabin. It had a sort of like a tent on the back, and it had very little protection. So he built himself a small boat that had a small motor as well as a sail. And then he single-handedly sailed that boat from Bangladesh all the way back to France through the Suez Canal. He then, getting back into France, he was acclaimed as the French love sailors and heroes, and so he was acclaimed as a great inspiration to the French youth, and he got a medal, he got a book dedicated to him. This is one of the books dedicated to him, and he had enough of a reputation in France then to go to a large industrial company, I think they were, and put to them the proposition that if they were prepared to buy him a boat, he would sail the world and take an inventory of what he called low technology, of alternate technologies on the planet, and report back to them, send them back videos and information regarding that, if they would sponsor him. And they agreed to then buy him, so they bought him a 120,000 euro catamaran that he then set out to sail around the world in the year 2016, something like that. And then, so I'd completely forgotten about this kid until he turned up one day in Fertile, and I'm going, hey, Coco, and he sailed into Chennai Harbour. And he had his boat, the first yacht to sail into Chennai Harbour apparently in 14 years or something. It's such a grotty harbour. And then he said, I'll come to pick you up. Okay, and then first we've got to build, then we had to build a solar cooker. We had to build a composting toilet. And we had to build a pyrolyzing wood-fired stove to put on the boat. These were the projects we had to do. He also travelled at that point with he had the wherewithal before he left France to go to Arte, the big video company in France, and put a proposal to them that if they were prepared to finance the journey itself, he would allow them to make documentaries about the projects that he was working on. And in each of the countries he came to, so they came to Auroville, and they did a project actually included the Auroville reforestation, but it also did the building of a solar cooker, and a pyrolyzing stove, and a composting toilet, which we eventually moved and put onto the boat. And then, so together with him, then, what happened is these Arte would meet the boat every time it stopped at a port, and they would do a documentary in every port they're in. So then I sailed with him then down with the two girls who'd never sailed before, down to Sri Lanka. And we did a documentary in Sri Lanka regarding, that's what he's doing there is working on a small pyrolyzing stove, because the project that we worked on in Sri Lanka was a waste plastic pyrolyzing project to make diesel from waste plastic, which is actually a very simple and easy thing to do practically, and we've done it in Fertile even. And so that was a project we worked on there. And then we sailed across to Thailand, where the project there was the cultivation of insects for food. But the video crew was very late in coming, so finally I returned before I had a chance to be a part of that video. And then they sailed on to America, and what about then? No, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Then they sailed down to. The next thing was Mexico. He wanted us, by the time they'd sailed across that was after Japan, right? The next thing he put to me was to sail from the Philippines to Taiwan to Japan. And so this was the following year. Omid and I, it's an Iranian friend of mine who's living in Fertile, or was then. We then sailed with him from the Philippines, where we did a project on a thing called ram pumps, which is a way of pumping water up to villages, and a whole series of different projects there to do with the cultivation of mushrooms, and those we did documentaries about. And then we sailed to Taiwan, where we did a documentary on these sort of computer cowboys who were putting together computers from waste electronics. And then we sailed to Japan, where we did a project on a zero waste village before returning back to Auroville. The boat then sailed across to America and down to Mexico, and he wanted us to come down to Mexico, but the Mexican embassy was closed for the whole of the COVID period. And so we couldn't do that, but then he always insisted that I come and do the last leg of the journey with him, which was from New York to France, the sort of triumphant return after 6 years of traveling around the world. And so then I was always, I mean, sailing with anybody is a bit of for me, is a bit of an ordeal. But and so I was always a bit apprehensive, and I was always hoping that somehow, he'd forget about it or something. But he kept on hammering until it got to a point where, and then so I couldn't. Omid and Marc were going to come with me, but Omid, of course, being Iranian, we didn't have a chance of getting into America. And so Marc and I had to then be vaccinated. We had to, go through the whole period of getting into America. And that begins. So the story begins actually when we get to the airport in Madras with a desalinator. I built a desalinator this time, a solar desalinator.
Johnny, I'm worried because we have 483 slides to see. We have shown 2 in 13 minutes.
You want to put more slides?
No, let's start because the desalinizer is coming, and so let's start a little bit about the presentation. And what we could start is because we will explain a little bit what is low-tech, no, from the book. So I will go on and. No, so for example, what is funny with these low-tech people, it's like a tribe, no? And when you see them here, they are like teenagers. It's maybe 6 years ago, no?
That's the early crew on the boat when it first set out from France.
So this is a boat, the catamaran in New York, where we were in Brooklyn Harbor. So how big is it?
It's 45 foot long. It has a mast of 60 foot.
And it's full of low-tech. But Johnny, so low-tech, so just to show what Coco has done during these 6 years, so this is one part of the traveling. But the idea is for them to get some low-tech inspiration and to show what's happening. So this was in Sri Lanka? Or?
Yeah, in Sri Lanka, that was doing the pyrolizing. That's also in Sri Lanka.
So in the book that Coco and all the crew has done, it's about explaining a little bit what is low-tech. And so I just show you some samples of pictures. This is Olivier, who was part of the crew during our journey from New York to Concarneau. So we'll come back to him. So he's a guy who can repair everything, and he's very good with his hands, and this is all about low-tech. So this is how to produce electricity. This is wind, how do you call it, Johnny? This is...
wind generator?
Yeah, wind generator. This is spirulina. How to do... This is a the rocket stove. That Johnny has in Fertile. This is the crickets, because in fact Coco is veg, but he's eating crickets. So, but we will explain maybe more about it.
Yeah, I could explain that, but when the first thing he did when he got the boat was to rip out anything that was comfortable, even some of the lining of the insulation of the boat, and then he installed a large hydroponic garden in the main cabin area that shows constantly dripping and turning and things. So there's a large. He has a huge on the open deck. There's a large clear plastic spirulina tank that's constantly recirculating spirulina. He cultivates these black fly larvae, which because the thing about this boy is that he's intent on living in the future, and he's convinced that so he's not interested in anything that's to do, like he's not actually interested in recycling plastic because he thinks that's to do with the past. It's an interesting technology, but there's not going to be recycling plastic in the future because we're not going to have that problem in the future. We're going to have other problems, But anyhow, so his diet of the future consists very much of spirulina, of particularly hydroponically grown food and insects. And so he cultivates this thing. The black flies are actually like his family. He adores these black fly larvae, these things that crawl around. They've got the fastest metabolism of any insect on the planet. So we've got a great big bin there where you put all your rubbish, and your food rubbish and everything. And these things are all crawling around inside there. And then they, at a certain point, they need to pupate. So they crawl up an inclined bench inside of a large box, and then they drop into a dry thing of sawdust where they pupate, which means they harden into it's like a thing. And then you feed that to crickets. And you eat the crickets. That's the whole process. Yeah, so...
Okay, so now this is dehydrator. This is what Coco asked you to do to bring
He asked me to make him a solar desalinator. So that's a glass box that has two chambers. There's a chamber in the front and a chamber at the back, and it has at the back it has a small solar powered fan that sucks. So the way it works is that you get a condensation. There's a double perspex sheet of glass in the front, and you have a fan at the back, and it sucks it out. And it's a prototype. It's more like a laboratory to experiment with principles, because he's intent on desalinating all the water that he uses now, and so he asked me to do that. And so this was something we had to take. When we got to the airport in Madras, we had to. They're saying, "What's that?" You know, we're saying, "Well, it's a desalinator." They say, "A D what?" You know, and so they couldn't find desalinator on their list of things that you're allowed to take. And so for a question they weren't allowed to take it. But finally, you know, they could see that we weren't going to be able to bribe them, and so they finally said we could take it. And we also took a pyrolytic stove, which also confused them a little bit, but we managed to get these things, which was a bit of a miracle, really. I think through the customs and on the. I don't know why we're looking at me on the boat.
So we will have small sequences about this journey. So the first will be New York. So we arrived in New York. We went to Port Washington, which is not far. We went to New York, inside New York, so near the Statue of Liberty, after Brooklyn. And then we started the journey to the Azores, 19 days. So maybe we start with New York. We will not stop on each. If you want to say something, Johnny.
Yeah, I should say something about Matagiri.
Yeah, because we went to Matagiri.
Yeah, Matagiri is the AVI USA center there, run by Julian Lyons and his wife Wendy, and they run. Actually, it's more like Matagiri is about 40 acres of a maple orchard. And they run a sort of spiritual refuge, really. It's a sort of a. I mean, they have meditation. Or they're quite a few, about maybe 6 or 7 houses, including their recently built straw bale house. And then they have a little meditation hall, and they have all sorts of relics and things there, Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And so they're very devoted and dedicated people, and they're incredibly hospitable. And so they at first we just said all we needed was their address, but they insisted that we come and stay with them, and they fed us like we needed fattening up, and so we had a wonderful time with them. And also, because I need to cook on the boat with wood fire, we needed a wood supply, and they had a maple orchard, which with a lot of maple wood there that we were able. So Marc and I, while we were there in Matagiri, we split all this. We sawed and split up these logs of maple, and a lot of the stuff that we were carrying on the boat was firewood, which is actually unusual on a boat to have a fire. But I mean, the other thing was that we sailed from here. We left here from 35 degrees to a 10 degrees centigrade. Winter there was snowing in Matagiri over there, you know, and I was dressed like that, you know, so it wasn't exactly, it was bloody freezing cold, and we weren't ready for it. Okay. And when it's already an ordeal, it's twice as miserable when it's freezing cold.
So this is the boat. You see here the rocket stove, but we will go. This is the fridge, the natural fridge. So it's not always clean, but for sometimes
it's very difficult to film the boat. Yeah,
the French flag, you see. So so Johnny with his diary, Coco and Caro. So they are the two. Well, they are a couple. So inside, it's not really like a usual boat, huh?
Not at all.
So yeah, hydroponic. This is all the electronic work, and we will see later.
There were 5 of us on the boat in the beginning.
Six, Johnny.
6 eventually.
With
5 in
with
New
automatical pilot.
Huh?
With a
Oh,
pilot.
you could counting the automobile. and in such a tight space, 5 people. Here we are in New York. I mean, it's in New York. I mean, we were. I think the image I had of New York was always from above, as if we were like. I feel like an ant in New York in a sort of concrete jungle. And we weren't very good tourists. We walked in circles, and then I think we ended up in Little India.
Yeah.
And of all the things that we swore we were going to eat in New York, we ended up eating samosas. And so we.
Johnny, this is Olivier. So part of the crew, Caro, Coco, you,
And that's Olivier's wife.
Yes, and me.
She didn't come with us.
No. So
that's Marc. Yeah, so like I say, we wandered around New York. We really hadn't. We weren't in a tourist mode, you know. Like all we were doing in New York was stocking the boat, really, because most of the time we were in New York, we were on the boat in the New York Harbor, moored right in front of the Statue of Liberty, which is bright green because it's copper, which was for me was a surprise. And she has a chain. Apparently, originally it was an Egyptian princess, and she was supposed to be in the Suez Canal, apparently, and she was suddenly switched to America. She has a broken chain connected to her foot.
Okay.
Part of the symbolism.
So this was still in Port Washington. So we were preparing the boat, and because the boat was there for all the winter, and they had to redo all the hydroponics, so they had to start again all the low-tech ideas. This is what we received from the news we received from Auroville. No, we were a little bit worried, but yeah. Okay, so in Matagiri. So this is
Matagiri in the snow.
Woodstock, near Woodstock, 1.5 hours from New York. So
yes, very beautiful wood straw bale house, only 2 years old. That's the yoga studio upstairs where we slept.
So this is how is it called? The Storm King Art Center. You remember when we went to this park with sculptures?
Oh, a huge sculptural park.
So
yeah.
On the way back,
there's an Andy Goldsworthy wall that just follows, meanders across the landscape. He'd taken apart a lot of countries' freestone walls and put together this really beautiful wall that
so it goes under
between the trees, goes under the river and comes up the other side. And the most exciting thing there was a sculpture of a guy called Kenneth Schnelling, who was a disciple of Buckminster Fuller's, who built a tensegrity. Have you got a photo of that?
Yeah.
Somewhere there. But
Wendy,
for me to finally see that they're incredible sculptures. Yeah, it was a 40-acre sculpture park.
Noguchi,
quite near to Woodstock. There it is. That's for those who know the work of Buckminster Fuller and Kenneth Schnelling. That's a tensegrity tower.
What is amazing here? It seems low tech, but in fact it's high tech. No, when you see how they have done it and this tension and these cables, it's a lot of quality in it.
Yeah, it's not clear where low tech and high tech separate. They're not supposed to separate.
So this is a guy, yeah.
Okay, so in Brooklyn Harbor, finally, and waiting for because now you can pretty well guarantee to get a 10-day accurate weather forecast. After 10 days, it's difficult to predict usually. So we wait until we had Coco. Actually, there's 2 sorts of sailors I've observed. There's sailors who really don't like to be on the land, who flirt with the sea and all its dangerous aspects. And then there are sailors who are like Coco, who are pragmatic in the sense that the sea and a boat is a way of getting from one place to another, and you do it as safely and carefully as you possibly can. And so he's that sort of sailor, which is much more to my liking, actually. And so we wait in New York until we didn't ever really have a pure 10 days ahead, but we had a pretty good forecast from there. And so we waited. We began by we were allowed 3 days for free in a Brooklyn marina. Marinas are very expensive places to be. I think it was $200 a day if we were paying.
Johnny, here we are still in Port Washington. We are not in Brooklyn.
Okay.
So let's go.
Okay, from Port Washington, then we went down. I don't know if you know the geography of New York, but you go down a river from Port Washington to Brooklyn.
So here we start from Port Washington and we go to the Statue of Liberty with Laurent, who is
trimaran.
With his trimaran, a friend of Coco, who helped us to. So this is the way to go through New York, and it was amazing because we were alone on the river, and so it was. Funny to be in a place like New York full of people and we were alone.
What's sort of scary is going under low bridges.
Yeah.
It always looks like your mast is not going to fit, you know. But, so you're sort of staying there the whole time. But it's all carefully measured. And there we are coming towards Brooklyn.
Yeah. This is exactly what we don't want here. It's an amazing city also, but this was a friend of Caro coming from Canada.
Wild tattooed girl.
She's young. Lot of helicopters everywhere. So
there she is. Yeah. No, she's quite magnificent. So we were moored right in front of her.
So Johnny, explain a little bit what you are doing here.
What's happening there?
No, you are doing the idlis, no? You are doing the.
Oh yeah, right. Okay. One of my roles on the boat was to actually Coco. The minute I'd introduced Coco to idlis, he's a totally dedicated idli fan. In fact, instead of calling this an odyssey, he called it the Idlissy. And so one of the things we did when he was here was, I don't know if you remember when Jay Lolita had a big promotion, she gave away free idli grinders. Do you remember 4 goats and an idli grinder was her slogan to get voted in? And so there's a warehouse full of these idli grinders in Pondicherry, which Coco found. I mean, I didn't know it existed, but he found it. And so there is an idli grinder, a really neat idli grinder with 2 stones on either side that I've connected to a bicycle that you sit there and you sit behind there, you sit there and pedal. So once a day, I was cooking idlis on the boat because we're Marc and I, or Ahmed and I, whoever was there, we were cooking all the time. And the good thing about idlis, though, is you cook a batch of idlis in the morning, you can eat them all through the day. Because on a boat it's good to eat all the time, but you don't need a big full meal, but you want to keep your stomach full if you want to keep it from coming out of your mouth. And so idlis are the perfect thing. We slice them in half and put them with peanut butter. We dip them in. We had a huge thing of maple syrup from Julian Lyons.
Johnny, I don't know if you remember, but Olivier was allergic to idlis.
Yeah, there was one problem between me and the old French seaman on the boat regarding whatever I cooked.
So here we see Coco with a cyclotron. So he was giving energy, but it took you 45 minutes to recharge a phone. So it was not very efficient. But no, go back. So here you see Johnny pedaling on the cycle, and this is turning, and this makes the idlis.
The problem with the idlis there, though, is it requires a reasonably warm temperature to ferment.
Yeah.
And at those temperatures, at like 10 degrees, it's very difficult to ferment. And so what I had to do was to heat the mix up on the stove a little bit, and then we had a thing called a Norwegian box. You know these things, it's like a very highly insulated sort of refrigerator thing that you put it inside, and it keeps things from cooling down. It's a way of extenuating a cooking process and so in order to do that, but still, you know, like I'm used to fermentation here doubling at least overnight, and there even sometimes it shrunk. So it wasn't, the Idlis was sometimes brickish, you might say.
So Olivier, we were in charge of cooking. Olivier was doing the washing. So, and when we were washing, he was really not happy. So he was shouting to us. But
fortunately in French, and I didn't understand a word of it.
So this was our kitchen. It's okay when you are not moving, but when the boat comes to sail, then it's a problem. So this was the most important thing during the day, to have a nap and to wait for the departure. Johnny has done a lot of these sketches, and so we will see some of them. Reading was also a big activity for during our sailing journey. This is the new one now that replaces the Twin Towers.
I think the interesting thing that you observe about New York is that every building is in competition with every other building. They're all compared to when we get, for instance, to somewhere like the Azores. You can see the difference is quite radical.
We had some parties. Caro and Olivier and me. So this is Brooklyn. So when we arrived in Brooklyn for 3-4 days to buy all the goods we need to start the sailing journey. It was a beautiful place because, when you see this, it's like, wow, it's
Brooklyn.
Manhattan.
Yeah, that's actually the
onions.
The hydroponic garden was looking really good
at the end.
Yeah, we weren't. Well, we weren't because we were headed for sort of the boat was going to be on display when we got to France. We weren't really allowed to eat the hydroponic vegetables.
So Johnny and me were supposed to chuck all the wood that we bought from Matagiri. It was quite a job for
splitting and.
This is the night where we went to the crêperie. You remember the crêperie? The restaurant, the French restaurant with the French guys. So
yeah.
This is half of it.
Half a drawing. There's another drawing.
Shit.
Now, Marc is one of Marc's great skills is that he's a scavenger. Which is essential to any form of upcycling, and to the point that I could order things from Marc, and he would go out scouting for them, you know. And in order to cook on the stove, I needed a chopping block, you know. So I'd say to Marc, look, I need a piece of wood about 50 centimeters high, so about 40 by 40, you know. Could you? And he'd go out and they'd come back with this pretty great thing, and where'd you get that? He said, I came across a guy in a park who was putting park benches, and he cut it off the end, you know, and I said, can I have it? And he said, yeah, you have it $100. And he said, really? He said, no, take it. And so, but he had to watch Marc. Coco took me aside at one point. He said, I'm worried about your friend Marc. He keeps bringing heavy things onto the boat. Marc had it up to his elbows in every garbage can in New York. And he'd still be there if he wasn't on the boat. So it was.
So we had one open day. So we had some friends coming to visit us and to.
This is our last day.
Yeah. So Sol, Noam, Sonia. So people came and they brought some stuff for the low-tech.
Julian Lyons came down.
Lara, Ishvari.
Ishwari. They bought us home-cooked cookies and bloody hummus and all this terrific
Vishvari was
food.
doing a big interview with you during this time, and this was a gig, no? This guy, you remember? 5
Yeah.
minutes before
Yeah.
we had to go.
Yeah.
What happened? So
So this crazy guy turned up in a classic New York, I suppose, but he reckoned he could give us access to Wikipedia at sea for free. But we had to rewire everything, and and he mucked around and mucked around and mucked around with all our stuff, and we couldn't get Wikipedia at sea. It was in the end, but it was.
So we were on the way to go to sail now, and this was my 3 days of really tough days. You will have no photos of it because I was just vomiting all day, and but
Okay, wait on. We from Brooklyn we sailed right across New York Harbor, which took us about a day. Actually, we motored across because there was no wind. And then we waited until another day until we had a moment, and then because in New York they all say to you, "Oh, there's the New England coast. There's the biggest waves in the world," and we're going, "Oh, really?" You know? And so we waited until the biggest waves in the world stopped, and then we shot out into the and in the beginning we had a although Marc got sick, we all got a bit sick, but it was relatively fair sailing when we first came out.
Just not Coco and Olivier.
Yeah.
They were never sick, but all the rest of the crew were sick. Yeah. So this is 3 days after. So yeah. So the pilot, automatical pilot, is our best friend on the boat.
Yeah, you don't have to on a boat like this. You don't have to do much actual sailing. Because on most yachts, at the current yachts, the reality is that you've got an autopilot, and you set your autopilot on a course, and if it goes off course or the wind changes or something, an alarm rings, and then you race to it and you change it and you do things, and so it's a very convenient. Like I say, I think for the real down at earth, down in the sea of sailors, they don't like autopilots. They want to be there at the wheel the whole time. Whereas the sort of sailing we were doing was a sort of gentleman sailing, really, because we spend because Coco, he's the whole time doing something else. You know, than sailing, he's racing around doing something with the hydroponics or
like you, Johnny.
Yeah.
You were doing the same on the boat. You were always busy. And
here's the map. Is that on the slide?
Yeah. So
this is
you see here there is a map of what Johnny has, and every day at 6 o'clock we were pointing.
Map. This is because what we headed into was the Gulf Stream. See, the Gulf Stream comes up from the equator, comes up the east coast of the east coast of America, and comes across and goes up into the English Channel. And so those colours are temperature shifts there. So as we came out, and this was the only map that we had to travel with.
The mic.
And so on this map, if you look closely,
Johnny, we have it here also.
Oh, there it is. There are dots.
Yeah.
Point out the dots. Every day, we had a string that went across it, that went across the map like this, and we would measure the duration that we travelled, and then here he is, that's Coco doing it, and then we'd plot on the map the points of our travel.
And it's funny because in the middle of the ocean, you see 2 points. They are almost so near from the other because there was no wind in middle of the Atlantic, and we were swimming this day, and it was very nice. So they had birthday also, Coco and Caro. So we were. We had a small birthday party. This is Johnny opening a ginger beer bottle that we prepared, and everyone was, because it was really fizzy, and so it was like champagne, no? So we had done 60 liters of it.
Essential part of all sailing is alcohol.
No, but at the harbor.
And so we made our alcohol. I think in the 3 months we were away, I think we made 60 liters of basically of ginger beer, just putting ginger with sugar and yeast and water, and so every evening at about 6 o'clock, we'd have a sort of a twilight beer ritual, which was great as a gathering of the whole crew and relaxing a bit the caution of the thing. But there was an interesting parallel, I thought, between, because this is the first time I've crossed a large ocean, but that what we found was that the Atlantic was very rough on the edges, on the coast when it's near to land and stuff. But as you get towards the centre, it became very calm, and so it seemed to me like a rough analogy of the mind. You know, that it's very turbulent on the edges, but it's silent at the centre. Because we got to the centre, after 10 days or 12 days of travel, we're suddenly completely becalmed. And it was as if you could walk across the water. The water was smooth as concrete. I don't know if you've got any photos of that. And the only downside to it was the Portuguese man of war, which is this blue jellyfish thing with long, they call them the blue bottle in Australia. There's things that have a long tentacle, and if they wrap around your legs, they sting you every time they touch. And the sea was littered with them. And I've seen them in Australia. They call them the Portuguese man of war. And we suddenly realized we were in Portuguese waters. You know, we were approaching the Azores, which are Portuguese islands. And so, and we were just north of the Bermuda Triangle. We were tempted to go and dip into the Bermuda Triangle just to see if it was exciting enough.
The maximum wind we had was 50 knots, huh?
Yeah, we had 50 knots one night.
Yeah, and we had to...
So we did a top speed of... A knot is a kilometre and a half an hour. And so we're doing an average speed of 5 knots, which is what, 7.5 kilometres an hour, which isn't much, but at sea that seems like a hell of a lot.
So Johnny,
one night we did 20 knots.
Here, Johnny, you are doing a kite, no? It was Coco request you. He wanted to put a GoPro on the kite to. You remember?
No.
Okay.
What's that?
The kite. The kite.
Oh, the kite. Oh, yeah. He wanted to put a camera on a kite and film the boat from the sky. So we spent a long time building a kite.
And Coco was eating all day. It was amazing. From the morning with his egg to after porridge and this and that. Wow, it was amazing. He was never sick. So Coco is a low-tech engineer. He's an engineer who is doing low-tech, and he's doing, for example, his headphones himself. So he buy very good speakers, Bose speakers for $14 on Amazon. Okay, this is maybe the wrong side, but then he's doing all the things himself. So in his workshop on the boat. So this is coming from normal headphones. So for the ears, but this what was it, Johnny? What did he took?
That was a coat hanger.
Oh yeah. So with Velcro and so because he's a jogger, so he likes to run with music, and so he's doing his headphones. So this is when we came to the Azores. It was
just to give an idea of what it was like on the boat at sea. So long as the wind, if the wind is behind us, so we had a sailing guru. We did have on the boat. We had a satellite phone called an Iridium, and the Iridium allows us 1 sentence a day. Yeah, and so we had a guru who was the guy who'd previously owned the boat, a guy named Bernard, an older guy in Paris or in France somewhere, in Brittany actually, and so once a day. We would send him a report on what sort of day we'd had, and he would send us a bit of advice about what to do the next day. You know, like he'd say, okay, you guys, I think there's a big storm coming down from the north. You guys better head southeast, because the worst times we had at sea was when you had storms on either side. The storms behind were no problem, but when you had storms from either side, you had big waves coming, so the boat was getting banged from the side. And the boat, these things are just made out of plastic, the boats, you know, they're just long plastic tubes, really. And so they're very acoustic, you know, so you're sleeping in the middle of this sort of thing and it's bang, bang, bang the whole time. And it's like, there were nights like a washing machine, were there? You know, there were nights where absolutely impossible to sleep. And so your sleeping hours are very strange. You sleep because you do a shift. You do 2 hours of being in charge of the boat. You're taking in turns like that. But I mean, you never really know when you last slept or when you next. So you sleep and you wake and you sleep and you wake. But the principal thing that preoccupies you at sea is food, and you're all the time thinking about and talking about and doing food,
especially when you are French. So after 19 days, we arrived in the Azores in Sarah's apartment. So Sarah.
Oh, are you speeding up? Are you? Okay, Sarah was a girl from who stayed in Fertile around the same time that Coco was there. I think about 12 years ago. She was just an excited young student then, who stayed there for about a year and then had kept in touch with me because she was a sailor and she'd gone and worked on boats in the Caribbean and stuff. And so and I knew that she was back in the Azores, so I contacted her that we were coming, and she was so excited. And then so Omid actually he joined us at the Azores. Omid flew into the Azores, and he then was able to stay with her in her apartment. And so when we arrived in the Azores, which was, you can imagine, finally after 3 weeks at sea to arrive in this place and be able to have somewhere to be still and to put your feet up and to have a hot shower and to eat a slice of bread with butter on it, sort of thing, was a huge luxury. Yeah, and so we had all of this just handed to us by this wonderful girl, who then showed us, led us around the Azores, and the Azores is a series of, I think, at least eight different islands. They're all very volcanic. And the island we're on, I'm not sure the name of the island, but the town we're in was called Horta, and there were 8 volcanoes, and some of them had been active as recently in 1956. And then we did a trek down through all these wind-blown trees, down through these volcanic craters. They've put tunnels going into volcanic craters, and then down through this. So there's quite a beautiful place to go to the Azores. Plus the fact that they're right pretty well, and they're 2/3 of the way across the Atlantic, and so they're a big intersection of serious sailors. You know, you don't get any Sunday sailors in the Azores. There are all these characters in. I mean, there's some amazing looking boats there. There was this guy, Ulysses. This guy is this German guy. He was taking coffee, organic coffee from Colombia to the Netherlands. He had 20 tons of coffee in this 4-masted boat. And so you've got this huge conglomeration of young people, not only, but on boats and things all there. There's bars where they're full up with people all shouting and drinking. And then there are romances between people on different boats and girls changing things. And boy, the whole thing, it's a very wild place, the Azores, but it's also a very beautiful place. And, because the Portuguese have a real touch with, like the Spanish, with color and pastels. And so the architecture is, in fact, Sarah complained that you have to apply to change the color of your house in the Azores. It's so carefully managed.
So this was New York, Azores, and so it was on the map. So this was in the very famous bar where all the sailors are going, and because the most important in sailing is to arrive at the harbor and to go on.
Yeah, sailing is all about landing.
Yeah.
And drinking.
And storytelling.
That's a view from Sarah's house.
So this is Coco's uncle. No, he was running the first day, because when you are sailing 19 days and suddenly you come and you make a trek, my God, I could feel my muscles. It was horrible, no? So, and Coco went the first day to run, and he shifted. How do you say?
Now, he was jogging, and he jumps from stone to stone. And he's jogging, and he slipped and fell, and then sprained his ankle. And so we couldn't really leave the Azores until he could at least walk again properly. And so, which was we didn't mind that. We still had at least 2 weeks to spare to get to France.
So this is the Harbor Horta, and when we went to the Capitainerie, they said we never seen so many boats here. It's the first time that it's full. The house is full. So yeah, it was really packed on people from Japan, many French, many people from North Europe, Swedish. So this is
about 3 days after we sailed in, this boat came in with a broken boom and a mast and the sail hanging in rags from the thing, and they're going, "Oh man, there's a big storm out there. You guys just got here in time." And they go, "Thank God."
We were used to go in a bar, and at the end, she was giving us free shots. It was open bar. It was very nice. Very nice people.
Yeah, very friendly.
Pico is another island. We are in Fayal, so this is the name of the island. And normally, you don't see the end of the mountain. You see what is under, but this was yeah. So Coco had to run, to walk with a cycle, in fact, because he couldn't walk. So this is, we will see it after. This is Pi. We had a phone call with fertile community, and Pi was there. It was nice also to. Yeah,
that's Omid on the end of that reef, photographing a breaking wave that finally broke on top of him and broke his camera at the same time. There's poor old Omid with his brand new camera. I thought it was waterproof.
Yeah, he was doing interviews with Coco and Johnny, so we hope to see the movie soon. So this was a walk. Sarah brought us to the place and said, look guys, it's good to make a trek there. It's maybe 10 kilometers, but it was beautiful.
Huge forest, all planted with a thing called a Pinus japonicus, the Japanese pine, massively straight and massively high. And it's almost like a monoculture through their forest there. It's a peculiar culture. And between that, then are fields with cows and then volcanoes. It's a very relaxed place, the Azores, the whole of the Azores, and very cheap.
Compared to New York.
And France.
Going up. So this is the place, Johnny, you were talking about this volcano, no? So you go...
Oh, yeah. There's a tunnel. They've cut these tunnels into volcanic craters. So you go through this tunnel and you come out in a crater, which is there we are inside a crater, and it's an incredible silence inside a crater because it's cut completely off, and so it's quite a wonderful meditation hall.
We were repairing the sails because it was the last. We had 10 days to do, no, and so it wasn't.
The sails are already quite ripped and old.
Yeah.
And so there you just keep gluing on these big patches. We had to do every boat that sailed in there did a little logo. That was our logo.
The Fresnel lentille. You remember, Johnny? So Coco wanted absolutely to make a biogas out of this Fresnel lentille.
A Fresnel lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that
So-
we eventually did in the festival
Yeah.
in Concano.
So this was the storm before we decided to go. The last dinner, it was horrible because at this time I had COVID. And it was like breaking me down, but really, and I had to handle this. And I knew that we had to go sailing the day after. So I was a little bit like, oh, no. But okay, so, and this is Ulysse' boat, no? The French guy who went to Colombia with
20 tons.
20 tons?
Yeah, 20 tons.
20 tons of coffee.
Yeah.
And but he was bringing me the COVID also, this guy. So, but I like him. So yeah, so this is also 3 days after because it took me 3 more days to recover. I'm always sick 3 days, and after I'm fine.
Yeah, actually, so then there were 10 days from the Azores to France, and they were, from my personal experience, they were much more enjoyable than the 3 weeks to the Azores.
Ginger beer.
Because we had exactly the right wind. Because once we were in the channel going up towards France, we had the wind to the southwest, and we're traveling east, and that's for a boat like that. That's the ideal sailing conditions, and so we just shot home to France. I mean, as we got towards the Azores, got towards France, so it slowed down until we really we were going in with like 10 knot winds and things, which got to be a little bit frustrating because you can see land ahead and you're going very slowly. And Coco's reluctant always we got a motor on the boat, but it's a very poor motor. It's only just to go in and out of harbour, and so he's very reluctant to ever turn the motor on. So we insist on sailing all the way, and we sailed into a really beautiful archipelago, didn't we? We
Yes.
sailed in the night, we sailed in, and we didn't really know. We knew that we'd come to land, and then you wake up in the morning and we're surrounded by these really beautiful islands, because Brittany in France, apparently it's a real sailor's mecca. There's a sailing school there where all these young French kids learn to sail.
Yeah,
And Brittany, they're all sailors. They have from Concano there in the south. They have this Vendée Globe, this race around the world. You know, single solo race around the world down through the Antarctic and everything, which is really probably the most incredible, scary ordeal you could ever imagine going on. It goes for more than almost 3 months.
What happens to your heads? But it's like that.
This is La Forêt. This is where we found. We didn't go into the port of Concano, which was our final destination, because they wanted to have a ceremonial entry where we sort of had to pretend that we just sailed in from the sea. But we sailed into actually this very beautiful little port called La Forêt, and it was so calm and quiet. Naime! And then suddenly Naime was there.
Yeah. She came with Sarah, Omid's sister, who lives in France.
It's just, I was just saying to be, it's so incredible to John. I was just saying it's so incredible when you're out of Auroville and you see an Aurovillian. They're suddenly about 10 times more valuable. You know, even if you hardly ever knew them. You know, there's this incredible connection of a shared experience, and to see Naime, because Omid, of course, she's Omid's wife. But there's Omid with us, you know, and then to see Naime, like in that world, it's like wipe your eyes, you know, it's incredible. And you come to realize, particularly in this journey in France, you come to realize that Auroville is a much larger embrace than just the parochial geography that we're squabbling over, you know. When you realize that there is this, everybody we knew that we met there, all these young kids, they all knew about Auroville. They even knew about Auroville's troubles and things. They're all fully tuned, these kids. They all knew about low-tech. They all knew about cocoa, and they were part of the culture, you know.
Johnny, why did you took these pictures?
What is that picture? Oh! Yeah, I made that for my Tamil friend Tim, just to show him, because he wouldn't believe that you could get cakes like that anywhere in the world, you know. I mean, and also the French cake shops. There's no cake shops like that. I mean, that's not Marc's coffee shop, Matilda.
No, long time you didn't go to Marc's coffee shop. So
So yeah, this is the little. It was the perfect place to rest La Forêt, because Concano, when we finally got to Concano, it was very busy. It was quite a large place, and it's a large centre for like all these international yachts, and so it was.
this was your lunch. It was so cool to sit on a terrace and to have. It was like such a luxus.
Yeah, Marc was suddenly back in France, and he couldn't wait to just introduce us to bars and cocktails and
My family,
cheeses
and Jonas, Felix,
his
Johnny.
2 sons.
Yeah, it was nice to meet. Oh, so yeah, we went to this place to build showers for the volunteers, no? So you remember, Johnny?
Yeah. The good thing was when we got there, because we were worried that we wouldn't have anything to do when we got there. Well, like we felt that they'd paid our way, to come, and so we felt, and then so immediately they wanted a composting toilet and a shower built in as part of it, because we were there 2 weeks before they were having a big low-tech festival that we were all coinciding with, and so we were really glad to. And they'd be really incredible workshop, fantastic workshop with any tools and anything and materials and things, everything there. So it was a perfect place to.
And Johnny, this is the festival started, no? So we had a 1 week festival, low-tech festival organized by the low-tech studio there. And
yeah, you need to see that low-tech in France is a commonly understood and accepted subculture. Everybody knows low-tech, I mean, unlike anywhere else in the world, I think. And low-tech for them isn't just, it's alternative technology. It's solar cookers, and it's how to grow your own food. It's hydroponics. It's all those sort of do-it-yourself things.
Yeah, because there everything is high-tech. So you need to have a balance, because all these young engineers are surrounded by high-tech, and they see the value of low-tech, because high-tech is so important there, no? So.
But the thing is that it's not only, I mean, there were, I think, 180 kids are part of this NGO that runs this festival. And we were, I mean, there wasn't another one older than 40, were there really? I don't see anybody there. We were like these old decrepit characters in their context. But we got to know them through building the thing and working with them. And it's not just the things, they all see life as a service. That they go from here. They begin by volunteering with the NGO. Then, if they're very valuable to the NGO, they're employed. But then they go out and start their own NGOs. And there are ones going out and working with Syrian immigrants and working with poor people and homeless kids and all sorts of stuff. And so the solar cookers and all those things, the sort of tech devices, the low-tech devices, they're all just things that they try to introduce to people who really need alternate devices. So it's an incredible subculture, to the extent that we're now trying to establish in Fertile a low-tech lab, what we're calling a low-tech lab, so that they can come and we can begin a communication between these people and us, because it's definitely a very positive and adventurous new frontier, I reckon.
For example, here they were providing their energy with the solar panels, so they were autonomous. And normally it's easy to connect to the grid in France, but they wanted to make it autonomous. So this was a car, and it was funny because we were in Concarneau with this car, and the real cars were behind us, like, meh, 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 but we were going maybe 20 kilometers hour, and so they were not very happy. So we had to organize a festival with many volunteers, maybe 20 of them. And
so then the boat was moored right beside the festival ground there, and so there was
the boat still not arrived there. You will arrive very soon.
Oh, aren't they yet? Yeah, well then, okay, when he arrives. And so there's a constant queue of people, and they were giving Coco and Caro were giving like 15-minute tours of the boat.
Yeah.
I think there were 20 different aspects to the boat that they were displaying. Low tech.
This was a solar oven, so to bake bread. So this is the officials, the peoples who were giving money, so all the donators. And so look, because one guy is not moving in this photo. It's Coco here. He's just not moving. All the other ones. So this was the low-tech, how do you call it?
It was just a low-tech
The
house.
tiny house.
Yeah. Part of the whole tiny house movement, like within that little space there was a
furniture made out of
a solar water heater, a solar air heater,
Ginny, yes.
a pyrolyzing stove.
Johnny is the mic.
Ginny and Unsu turned up from
compost toilet. They will come. Compost toilet in the tiny house. This is a tiny house, so you have many devices. This is.
They're really beautiful. These little tiny houses. They just fit onto a trailer because they don't officially qualify as a house, and so they have to be no more than 2.5 meters wide. And within that thing, you've got everything you could possibly want.
So this was an exhibition.
Even a compost toilet and a shower.
Yeah, with what they found around the world. So this ceramic filter for water. So this was really well done, this festival. And so the dehydrator. This was when the boat arrived at Concarneau from Port-la-Forêt, so half an hour from there. And so people were waiting for it. And
so we did an Auroville presentation. And we had Marius with us. Marius, who's a French musician who's lived in Fertile, he'd come down and joined us, and so he actually enlivened our presentation by singing some really beautiful songs, and then turned the whole thing into a dance, collective sort of dance performance. And so it was pouring with rain outside, so nobody could leave, and so it was a great
Ginny,
who used to be the life and blood of the TLC.
Yeah.
And so then we set up. We were an official part of the thing. I mean the festival. But so we just did an Auroville corner. Marc did all the garbage cans in the area, and we had a lorry, and we went and collected the most. I mean, what they throw out in France is just incredible. What you have to pay for here, you get for free in France, and all this timber and stuff. So we're dealing with cable coils and pallets
this is Marius the singer.
Unsu made an alligator out of egg cartons, and we just made it. And then we did things with kids, basically. Kids, we made catamarans out of champagne corks and toothpicks. There's Llewellyn, my old captain from
and Lizzie.
And Lizzie, they're our old friends. Yeah. And so a lot of people descended on us from different parts of the world.
In Concarneau, it's also well known for having racing boats. No, so this most expensive racing boats that you can find, and
that's the Chinese one.
Yeah,
those things lift off the water.
They do.
They do up to 40 knots.
Europe, New York in 3 days, no, 4 days.
They can cross the Atlantic in 5 days. Yeah.
5 days.
What took us 3 weeks, a month. What took us a month.
So we have done stencil to make T-shirts, Nomades des Mers.
We just did everything we could possibly think of.
Coco in a small chair, the lentil, the Fresnel.
Oh yeah, they wear this large Fresnel lens. That got us into a bit of trouble actually, because that's a Fresnel lens is a very peculiar thing. It's only a millimeter thick, but it's a magnifying lens, and when your sun shines through, it has a focal point which is massively And so when we were trying to make wood gas by filling up a can with wood shavings and concentrating a solar beam on it, but when we first did it, it dissolved the tar surface of the road below the thing, and the security guy, this big security guy, came along.
The fireman. No. Stop!
It wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
So we're
Oh, Johnny, in the morning, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I managed to keep up. The yoga. Sometimes I'd see I could keep it up maybe a third of the time, but then whenever in a marina, there's nothing more delightful than yoga on a marina.
Olivier came back to visit us because the crab, Ginny's crab, yeah. Oh, so yeah, we had a Vélo Russian, what we call in French, so a big event with cycling. And the good thing is, they provide the speaker, good music, and many people on the cycle and going all around. This was our cycle, going all around the town, and it was really nice, yeah.
It was a beautiful little town, Concano.
So this is what we have done, the furniture with the pallets. So many chairs and the mare. So Sol came back also, the young guy who was in New York came back to Concarneau. So these are the small boats that we have done. Look at this guy who is looking to Johnny.
And now Coco and Caro they just sailed down now to Mexico, and his next project is to try and live an autonomous, I think, 4 months in a desert down there beside the sea, and desalinate all his water, and live only on. I mean, the only thing I think that is importing are carbohydrates. Because he tried to do this before, and he can't survive without some form of carbohydrates, and in 4 months it's not long enough to be able to generate them, and so it'll be interesting to see what comes now. There's Coco and Caro, our last image of them as we get on the bus to Paris, and
welcome back. So in Paris we had a friend, Marius, who has given us his scooter. It's funny because I brought the scooter back, and he said, "Oh, move the scooter." So I brought it back after 10 days, and I tried to start the scooter. The scooter was dead. So he has given us free ride in Paris, but when I brought it back, it was not working anymore. So, yeah, you remember this shop, Johnny?
Yeah, they take upcycling very seriously in Paris.
Yeah, in this shop.
And a lot of this stuff comes from Africa.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's made from beer cans and bottle caps, and that's made from metal tiles. No, there's incredible...
But it's an opportunity. Upcycling is an opportunity.
Most of it's sort of sculpture.
Yeah.
Or ornamentation. It's nothing very practical. Like Coco was always about useful art.
He's right.
Yeah, great graffiti in Paris.
Aussi. The Aussi bar.
Yeah.
Johnny, who was drawing with his helmet on, it was funny. Yeah. Notre Dame.
The Notre Dame.
They had some issues also there.
Notre Dame in a state of ruin after the fire. You can see that there it is. You can see they reckon 10 years it's going to take them to. But they found the craftsmen and the tradesmen and the materials to rebuild it. Amazingly enough, as it was originally built, without using heavy machinery.
La Contrescarpe, it was funny too because it was his first time, Johnny, in Paris. So I was so happy to bring him in some places where, no, not Montmartre, le 5e, near the Panthéon, La Contrescarpe. This is a new museum done by this French billionaire, and it's amazing because it's such a quality in architecture, but also such impersonal, and I don't know, it's modern art as a problem because you don't understand it anymore. So this was in the cafe there, but Brass Cafe. I always wanted to go in this very fancy coffee. And when they bought me a coffee with white sugar, I said, "You have only white sugar?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, not possible." This is Bertrand Lavier. So you see, this is maybe 500,000 euros. So it's just a saw, and yeah, it's. So we went after to Musée d'Orsay. So this is all the impressionist and who is this guy? Bourdelle. I don't remember the sculpture. Marius, in his place. It was amazing to be with him. Also, we went in different places. This is the area where we were living. This is our place where we were living in a studio given by friends. And yeah, so that's it. So now it's about Fertile, Johnny. What's happening in Fertile?
Well, yeah, no, that's taken this morning. That's Illingu. Illingu, now we're just rebuilding an old cow shed now and turning into the low-tech lab where we're hoping to do workshops with anybody that's interested in including children in building low-tech things. And so the next mellah we want to have is a low-tech mellah.
Okay, so we have a few low-tech gifts here for them. We wrap them, of course, in string. So I'd just like to present to Johnny. These are from Bharat Nivas. Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation, for the inspiration. This is fantastic. You know, we see how Auroville is not just, you know, a little thing going on here in Kulapalayam, but it's around the world. And thank you for that huge effort and coming here, because see, they were not going to do this. I told them that, you know, you have to do this for the community. You have to come out and then Lisbeth told me, oh, they have to go around to all the schools now. They have to tell everybody. So let's see what happens. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you on 29th, and we'll continue.